of Tomorrow Weekend Edition, your one-stop platform for anything to do with the entrepreneurial world. I'm Sunanda Jaiseelan. On the show tonight, a very special segment that we call Dubai Eye. I'm in conversation with GEMS Education. Also, in tonight's episode, in the hot seat is JetSetGo. To talk to us about the education market in Dubai, how it's being disrupted, innovation, impact of pandemic, all of that. I don't want to take anything away from the interview. Let's head on over to Karen. She's joining us live from Dubai with this very special conversation. Karen, over to you.
Hi Sunanda. When it comes to education in the UAE, there are so many options catering to families from all over the globe. As one of the biggest and oldest education providers, GEMS Education is a homegrown success story that spans 60 years. Earlier, I talked to Dino Varkey, CEO of GEMS Education, about that journey and his future plans. So Dino, it's been challenging times with the pandemic, but how has the UAE education sector evolved as a result?
The pandemic has presented us with perhaps the most unnatural social and economic dislocation of our lifetimes. However, the UAE has been an exemplar in managing the pandemic, in ensuring that their citizens are safe, but while still being able to deliver the real buoyancy within the economy. When we look at the education sector, one of the things that we're very proud of is our children have been back to school for the last 12 months. That hasn't been the reality for many students around the world, where frankly the pandemic has perhaps exposed the inherent weakness and how unprepared many education systems were. I'm very proud of the fact that if we take GEMS Education as an example, we've delivered 2 consecutive years of our best ever academic results. So that's something to be incredibly proud of, and is testament certainly to the way the UAE has managed the pandemic.
Let's talk about technology now. How has GEMS Education embraced technology to address the changing needs of the students?
So when we think about the changing needs of students, technology naturally is one of the places that people gravitate towards. Very pleased that we have consistently invested behind our technology infrastructure for many decades, and for us it wasn't just about the technology, but it was the consistent expectations that we have across our people, our pedagogy and process that's allowed us to deliver the quality of outcomes and quality of educational potential for our families. Separately though, when we think about the needs of students, it's also about curriculum. What are we teaching our kids? Are they going to be truly future fluent? Are we teaching them things that are going to be future relevant? So for us, it's a combination of technology, but also real curriculum innovation towards the future of education.
What approach do you take to attracting talent in the various schools?
We're very fortunate that GEMS is seen as the education employer of choice globally, by virtue of the fact that my grandparents were teachers. The DNA of this organization is very much rooted in education. Our foundation came up with the Global Teacher Prize, which is synonymous with ensuring that teaching is seen as what it is, the noblest of all professions. So it has been relatively easy for us within our sector to hire the best people. On average, when we get into recruiting, we typically get 65,000 applications, and we typically hire on an annual basis about 1,500 to 2,000 teachers. So it's a good position to be in, and we're very proud of certainly the heritage that we have in education, and we recognize that it is something that our people are very proud about.
In Dubai alone, 10 new schools have opened in this academic year alone. How has GEMS Education remained competitive?
For us, it's very simple. It's always been about delivering the promise and potential of every child that we have the privilege of educating. That purpose and that mission hasn't really changed. The nature of competition in the market is one that we welcome. We always say that, the greater competition, the better and the more choice families have. But I always go back to the fact that, within this market, we've been doing this for 60 years. We have generations of alumni that are out there making an incredible impact in the world. And when families are making choices for their children, we want to make sure that our schools are clearly the leading choice for families.
Moving away from the UAE now, GEMS Education has expanded regionally and globally, including in India. How has such expansion benefited your business?
I think expansion for us is very much driven by the fact that we want to try and ensure that we're fulfilling our purpose. Our purpose is simply to try and put a quality education within the reach of every child, no matter where they are. So expansion driven by furthering purpose. For us, it is a function of looking at those markets where there is clear need, where the ambition and the aspiration for families, for their children in terms of education is very, very high. And so that's where we've typically gone to. It's given us global market presence. It's given us the ability to be able to say that we're the leading private K-12 education company in the world. And again, that's something that we're very, very proud about and excited to continue to build on those foundations.
Finally, Dino, what do you think are the opportunities and the challenges moving forward in the education sector?
Certainly the onset of the pandemic, as I said previously, has exposed some pretty stark weaknesses in education systems around the world. The level of learning loss that children around the world have experienced may take many generations to try and recover. When we think about global teacher shortages, to meet the Sustainable Development Goals around education, 70 million teachers short. Those are some of the real challenges that this sector has. But that being said, I think we're also seeing within the global landscape a greater willingness amongst, whether it's private sector, the NGO space, or even political leadership, to work together, to collaborate, to try and find some truly sustainable solutions to addressing these challenges. So there's a lot to be hopeful for, despite the fact that those challenges seem insurmountable.
As you heard from Dino, technology is redefining the student learning experience and is changing the landscape of education in the UAE. Back to you, Sananda.
All right, Karen, thank you very much for that. We're, of course, going to come back and continue chatting with you on other industries and what's going on as far as innovation in the Dubai market is concerned. For now, though, I have to slip into a short commercial break. On the other side, someone who's completely disrupting her industry. I'm in conversation with JetSetGo in the next segment. Do come back in just a moment. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow Weekend Edition. In the hot seat tonight is JetSetGo. Kanika, good having you here on the show and congratulations. I was just reading through some of the firsts and some of the highs that you've had, and it's really impressive. So maybe you could start there and just get a sense from you as to how you have managed to become the largest private jet operator in the country. What has that journey been like for you?
So, but actually, we started the company purely as an aggregator. We wanted to be a marketplace for private jets. I was young and naive, and I thought that if I build an app, I'm going to build the next Facebook, and I'm going to take over the world, and everyone will come book planes on my app, not really knowing the real depth of it. The first time a flight was booked on our app, the flight actually didn't happen because the operator backed out 2 hours prior to the flight. And obviously, my whole world came crashing down saying this is not going to work. So we went into a little more depth into trying to understand, what is the real issue behind it. And what we discovered was the real problems in the industry, in the private aviation space, are not to do with the booking process per se alone, but it's to do with quality, delivery, and consistency. 40% of the customers who booked private jets did not actually get them either due to a technical issue or due to a manpower related issue or due to some other glitch. So we said we've got to fix that. And this I'm talking to you about 7 years ago, and we said, okay, fine, to fix that, we need to go and buy our own aircraft. And when we tried to go around doing that, what we realized was there were numerous private jet owners in India who were chartering or selling their private jets out for lease much lower than what they costed to operate them, just to subsidize their fixed costs. So we said, hang on, why are owners losing money when there is a market, when this can be fixed? So we went around speaking to private jet owners and taking their aircrafts over under management and lease contracts, where they only owned the asset. We took care of the crew, the engineering, the operations, all of it, to ensure that they made money and the customer's bill was reduced. So we started out purely as a management company, as an aggregator of planes. In the middle of the year before last, that we realized that the planes that we were managing and operating on behalf of owners were not enough to fulfill the charter demand that we have right now. So that's when we said, okay, we're going to go start buying aircrafts or leasing aircrafts. And we started buying a few planes. We bought about 6 aircrafts. And then I said, why are we investing so much capex? Why are we putting ourselves out so thick? Why can't we lease airplanes? Only to discover that no one is actually willing to lease aircraft to an Indian company due to the history of, the way things have gone with Jet Airways and Kingfisher, etc. No lessor was actually willing to say that, okay, I'll lease you an aircraft in India, even if we were willing to pay a premium. And that's when we said, okay, we're going to start doing this on our own. And slowly from there, that's how we control the largest market share. That's how we control the largest amount of aircrafts in India, with a combination of our own aircraft fleet as well as a managed fleet.
As a young female entrepreneur, what perhaps were some of the challenges that you faced, whether it's restricted to the industry that you're in, or just as an entrepreneur that you would perhaps want to use to talk to our entrepreneurs watching tonight's interview?
I remember one of my first meetings when I went to pitch to a customer. It was a big conference room. I walked in, I was very young and naive. I was, I think, 22 or 22 and a half. And I walked into the conference room. I was the last person to enter. And the person turned around and said, Miss, can you ask everyone if they want tea or coffee? Because he mistook me for an assistant in the office. And it took all my courage to actually turn around and tell him, look, I'm the owner of the company who's here to pitch my product to you. And, not someone who's going to be getting the tea and coffee. I almost wanted to cry that day. So initially, I think when I started out, I had this amazing combination of being really young as well as a girl in an industry dominated largely by men, which I think worked both in my favor and disfavor. I got used to people assuming that I'm a cabin crew or a salesperson. I got people, I used to speak to customers, I used to speak to regulators, the ministry, and they used to say, you're wasting your time. Why don't you, look at doing something less demanding or less challenging? I remember my own family used to say, why don't you look at doing clothes or baking and stuff like that. So I think the hardest part initially was being taken seriously, and everyone thought I was here having fun and just joking around, which wasn't the case, obviously. But as it progressed, I think being a woman entrepreneur in this space actually helped me a lot. People, as they understood what I had in mind, what I wanted to do, actually went out of their way to help me and enable me. A lot of people in the regulator, a lot of people in the government said, we want this to happen for you. They went over and above just to make things happen for me. I have not had to deal with any red tapeism or any backlash on account of being a woman. I think it's only been more to do with perception in the early days. But in the last 3-4 years, I don't think I've faced any challenges per se, which I would say are because I'm a woman in the industry.
So, from an industry perspective, Kanika, this market and this industry, of course, is one of the toughest to be in the world. What would you want to tell our viewers about some of the biggest challenges that this industry is facing as we speak? Some examples of how you perhaps have managed to overcome that.
I think we are the most regulated industry in the world globally, not only in India. And when you try to change things in an industry that is extremely regulated, extremely caught up, like in India, aviation still works like it was working 20 years ago. A lot of our regulation is still historic. We've just made things digital in the last 6 months by EGCA, and even that, it's still not working very well. There's still a lot of hiccups because anything takes time to smoothen out. Just to give you an example, like a lot of times we don't have server, I mean the software doesn't work where we have to upload our application, which delays things a number of days. We had to induct an aircraft recently, but we couldn't apply for its permission because the EGCA software wasn't working. But that being said, I think the private aviation industry as such still works on the rules and regulations of the commercial aviation industry. There is no differentiation between the two, which obviously is a massive hindrance because we follow the same regulations a commercial airline follows, which puts a lot of hindrances in day-to-day operations. And I think the major challenges also are, India is not a manufacturing hub for components, for spare parts, for aircraft as such. If you have a maintenance issue, if you have a technical issue, you're dependent on getting parts in from America or Europe, which take a number of days. All our training happens abroad. There's no private aviation training for any crew, engineers that happens in India. So there's a lot of forex loss. You're dependent on the rest of the world. Just to give you an example, when lockdown happened, or even now, for example, so many of our crew that need to go abroad to train cannot go and train because Dubai is not allowing them to enter, Europe is not allowing them to enter. And we face challenges with this every single day. Suddenly your crew is scheduled to go for training, they're supposed to fly, and then you're told, okay, they can't enter this country. So I think India as such needs to beef up its infrastructure where we can at least take care of our own fleet, take care of our own requirements. I think we need to push a lot towards more competent manufacturing, a lot more training facilities, even MROs on that front. All major maintenance on most aircraft goes out of India because they just don't have the capabilities here. This was largely because of taxation issues prevalent in India, etc. The way I look at it, why can't we have foreign aircrafts coming to India? Why can't we have foreign pilots coming to India for training? Why can't India supply spare parts to the rest of the world? So I think a lot of backward integration needs to be done for this industry to actually succeed in India and go ahead.
Speaking of challenges for the industry, I do know that regulation and regulations for the airline and the aviation market anywhere in the world is very stringent. It differs, of course, from market to market. You have exorbitant fees that you're paying in any market that you're operating in. How have you sort of managed all of that? What can you tell us?
We as an organization have been very, very proactive in working with policymakers and working with regulators to try and make policies more industry friendly, more industry specific. I mean, I'll give you an example again. When we had to lease this aircraft, the first aircraft that we leased into India from Gift City, we had the Ministry of Finance involved, the Ministry of Commerce involved, the DGCA involved, the Ministry of Civil Aviation involved, the Customs involved, the airports involved. Till that aircraft actually landed in India, we weren't sure is the aircraft actually going to land. I was making 2 a.m. SOS calls to people in the DGCA and ministry saying that Customs says they don't know what to do, or the airport director says he doesn't know how to give us permission. So I think, for the last 4 or 5 years, we've worked very closely with the policymakers, with the regulators, trying to find a way through solving challenges, solving things. Pre-COVID, I was in a very different world where we saw it rising gradually. All the OEMs, international agencies had predicted India would be the second largest, third largest private jet market by 2022, 2023, which I don't think is happening. I mean, the USA has over 40,000 private jets. Sao Paulo alone as a city has 800 helicopters. All of India doesn't have 800 helicopters. All of India doesn't have 400 private jets. Despite our geographical diversity, we've got over 300 functional airstrips. The government is on a mission to connect every part of India. They're connecting more and more airstrips. And I don't think it's taken the trajectory it should have taken. Because just to give you another example, so many of our customers who fly abroad on private jets prefer not to fly on an Indian registered private jet simply because of the way regulation works, simply because of the inflexibility of flying on an Indian plane abroad. And, so I think that's changing now. In the last 6 months, there's been a massive rush for import permissions of aircraft. A lot of people are buying planes. A lot of corporate houses are buying planes. So I think the next 2 years are very, very interesting because the fear of flying commercial still exists. Commercial airlines are not servicing as many routes. And if you have to go by the reports and surveys that we're understanding, commercial airline travel is still not going to, that connectivity is still not going to come back for the next 3 years almost. So I have a very, very positive outlook. I think there's going to be excellent demand. Things are only going to go upwards from here. My only worry is that will the industry be able to service this demand with the shortage of skilled manpower, with the shortage of aircrafts, with the way the regulations are. So while the market's going to increase, I really wonder, is that market going to be serviced by Indian operators, or is the market going to be serviced by international operators who have more flexible regulations to travel with?
All right, Kanika, out of time on tonight's episode. So, maybe you could leave our viewers with what the future is looking like, what's exciting you, what future plans could you share with us?
Every year we've been adding more and more managed fleet. This year we've added 8 of our owned/leased aircrafts. Financially, the first 4 years since inception, we demonstrated 7x growth. And last year, the last financial year that went by was the only year where we didn't have growth. Our numbers remained the same as the previous year. But this year, I think the YTD is almost 2x of where we were last year, and slightly higher than when we were the year before last also. So the numbers are looking good. Profitability looks decent, thankfully. And as we induct more and more planes, I think these numbers are only going to go up further.
All right, Kanika, thank you so much for your time. Out of time on tonight's episode. If you have any feedback for us, we love hearing from you. Our contact details on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.